The most important job anybody has, the one that we're usually, at least probably more men than women, but often women today because they didn't really have much when women grew up in the olden days. There were bigger families, they had experience raising children, but being a parent is the most important job we have, and we come with it kind of spiritually, biologically hardwired. We want our kids to succeed. But there are three things that you have to understand. First is, what is the definition of success? A lot of we're in this coronavirus stupidity, and a lot of the dreams of people have gone up in smoke because success is not that somehow your child can be arrogant and you can brag about the fact that he is CEO of a company. That doesn't matter, right? People on the grave don't say, well, the man was a CEO. They say he was a good person. So there are only three things that we need to raise our children to, and it's brought down in Judaism. It's called Torah, Chuppah, Ma'asim Tovim. Study of Torah, the practice of God's way. Chuppah is the value system of getting married, and as never before, this is under great challenge. In fact, the Rebbe says that the Satan puts most of his effort into breaking up marriages because it's all about marriages. The world without marriages won't survive. In fact, quite interesting that many countries are doomed because they're going to have, like we see in Italy, older populations. Younger people are basically selfish, not to blame them, but they don't have an education and they don't have children, and there's just these old populations, and basically the countries, some countries have passed the point of no return. They're not going to exist in, statistically, whatever, it's 100 years or something. So the only two groups, ironically, that are succeeding in both being modern as well as having children are Jews, religious Jews, and religious evangelical Christians. Every other group, including Catholics, including the Muslims, as soon as they are able, the women, I don't know whose choice it is, if it's based on the men, based on the women, but the women basically stop having children. And if you stop having children, you stop the ability to have a future. There is no future without children. So I think particularly today, when there's such chaos, we have to focus on what matters and what's true. What matters what's true is that life is what matters, and that's what's true. And life begins with marriage. Without marriage, you have no life. And so we have to educate our children to get married. The degrees they have, a little bit of prestige from somebody, somewhere maybe, doesn't matter. What matters is, money is good, but money is a tool. It's not an end. It's a means. And so we have to educate our children to get married. And of course, good deeds. And ultimately, there's only one way we do this, and that is by being role models of it. So myself, I can't say I'm the best role model, but the point is that the more we ourselves engage in goodness, engage in our relationship, the more we do that, the more we succeed. There's a lady who has a very good marriage, and she speaks a lot about it. So she said that, she invests in her marriage. These are things that don't happen unless you invest. Your children don't become good unless you invest in them. Your marriage doesn't become good unless you invest. I remember before I got married, I went around asking lots of people for advice, and perhaps the best advice, I should have listened more carefully, but the best advice came from my barber. He said, nothing good comes easy. You want something good, love, well, you got to put something into it. So when you are willing to sacrifice, because if you know something is good, you're willing to sacrifice, then you make it happen. So we discussed two things. First of all, there has to be the education of Torah, the education of Judaism. You have to be a role model. You have to also teach your kids to get married. That is the goal of life. And then finally, most importantly, we have to see it as a responsibility. In other words, we all have a mission in life. In fact, we have many missions in life. And the stupidity of Western society, which thinks that somehow having a job There was a girl. Her parents were missionaries, so she grew up literally in the middle of some African jungle. And the people there knew nothing of society. Everything that we have, cars, planes, train, you name it, they know nothing. All they know was their traditions. And the people that came there, it was before cell phones, this and that, so they didn't bring much else. They just brought a belief system. So eventually the girl goes back to Germany, and the people that grew up with her parents, or not grew up with her parents, that grew up with, saw her growing up, she was a little child, so the people would ask her parents, I forget her name, let's call her Marcia. How's Marcia? Is her heart happy? They had no knowledge of, oh, she's a successful business person, she has money. It doesn't matter. They had huts, they had nothing, there was no material wealth to judge people by. Is her heart happy? That is what they wanted to know. That's a great way of describing it. Is your heart happy? And so we got to really understand that God gives us various responsibilities in life. And the most important responsibilities, as I write in my book, How to Discover the Meaning of Your Life, are right in front of your face. It is your wife, it is your children. Those are your greatest responsibilities. And if you put your effort into it, they will be your greatest dividends. So it all boils down to 3 simple principles. The first is, be a good role model, teach Torah, teach the value of life. Life is about marriage. Everything else is a means to an end. You have to value this yourself. And ultimately, by you valuing this system, investing in what matters, this is the thing that, people get older. What do they have? Even if they have money, it means nothing. All they have is their children. They live for their children, the time that the children come, this and that. As the Rebbe said when he was encouraging people to have big families, and I see it with my parents, he said, you'll have somewhere to go for the Seder. So in other words, you don't have children, you don't invest in them, you're not going to have anything. But the more you invest in your wife and your children, you're going to have everything that a person can have.